Good evening and welcome to the Sound Off Show. I thank you for joining us. It's great to have you with us tonight. I'm Linda Kirker. I host the program and love doing it. I think it's been closing in on 13 years now, and it's a lot of fun for me, and I hope you enjoy the program. By the way, I have never mentioned, I don't believe, on this show that if you enjoy watching the show on a regular basis and you happen to miss a program, you can find the show on YouTube. It takes, I don't know how long it takes for the studio to get it on to YouTube, but I don't think it's very long. And you just go to Northwest Access TV or .tv/YouTube, and then you'll find a number of my previous shows. And I just thought you might like to know that in case you miss a program and you want to catch up. So it was a wonderful 4th of July, so many flags flying and all of us patriots celebrating the birth of our nation. I'm a proud patriot, and I hope you are too. And I hope you're teaching your children and your grandchildren also to be proud to be Americans and to learn about the founding of this nation and what it was created to be and why it was created that way, what the founders left in Great Britain that they didn't want to replicate in this new land of theirs. And so I'm working with my guest tonight, actually, Rob Roper. Why don't I introduce you now? Welcome back.
13 years, huh? Has it been that long?
Yeah, just about.
How is it that we don't get older?
Oh, yeah. I think I have a few more white hairs. But I enjoy doing the program, Rob, and I appreciate that you drive here from Stowe to come and be a guest several times a year, because you have a lot of knowledge, and as the president of the Ethan Allen Institute, it's a nonprofit free market think tank, right?
That's a pretty good description of what we do, yes.
And I admire what you do, and you have so many resources for the folks. Why don't you, before we dig into other issues, why don't you just share with folks how they can access the Ethan Allen Institute materials and online and so forth?
Yeah, well, we have a lot of services that we do. I guess, as you say, the easiest way to get in touch with the broadest range of them is at our website, which is ethanallen.org, www.ethanallen.org. Mm-hmm. And we also have a radio show that we sponsor that is hosted by my good friend Bill Sayre. Mm-hmm. That's on WDEV radio out of Waterbury. It's got a number of station links, so I won't give them all, but WDEV, 11 to noon on weekdays, and you can also find podcasts of archived shows on our website. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I would like to highlight now, of course, we have a blog and we have commentaries listed and research papers and all that sort of stuff. That just a host of information on what happens here in Vermont from a policy perspective and what some of our solutions are. From a free market perspective.
Sure.
But I do want to emphasize, we just came out with our 2019 update for our legislative roll call profiles. And what we do is pretty unique, actually, is we put together a page. Every legislator who's currently serving has a page, all their own, on our website. And the key function of that is we take the top 10, 12, 15 votes of the legislative session, depending upon how busy it is. And we write a little paragraph explanation of what the vote meant and how your legislators voted on it. So you were a legislator. We weren't doing this back when you were in the legislature. But if you went to your page, it would have a picture of you up there. It would have your district and the towns that you represented, district,
Sure.
What were you, Chittenden 9-1?
No.
If memory serves.
No.
Okay, but anyway.
Chittenden 2 something.
But it would have been Chittenden whatever, and then the list of towns. So Essex Junction for you. It would have how to contact you, your snail mail address. It would have your legislative email address. If you make it public, it would have your personal email address. It would have a link to your Facebook page or your Twitter account if you have one.
Wow.
And also the links to all the local newspapers that serve your district.
Fantastic.
So you can click on the link. And our idea behind this is we want everybody to be able to understand what's happening in the legislature. You can read if you want more information, there are links on each of the things to the bill, so it'll take you to the original language of the bill.
Content.
It'll take you to the journal page where they debated the bill. It will take you to all the information you want. There's a longer summary that it'll take you to a longer summary of if you want more detail. But we want it to be a one-stop shop for people who can learn about their representative, learn about the issues, and be an engaged, informed, active citizen.
And voter.
We don't get so much into the voting thing. We tell people how to vote, or how to cast a vote, and how to learn how to cast it. We don't tell you how to vote, who to vote for. That's not what we do. But it gives you all the information to make an informed decision. And if you want to contact your legislator and say, "Hey, thanks for voting for that," or "Hey, why you're nuts? Why did you vote for that?" You can do it directly through social media, through email.
Fantastic.
Or if you want to say to the local paper, "Hey, so-and-so voted for this, and kudos," or "So-and-so voted for this, and we ought to rethink who we voted for last time," then you can click right on the link to the local paper. So it really is a one-stop shop. And this is more important. We've been doing this since I became president 6 years ago, and it's more important this year than ever because the Secretary of State's office. I don't want to give bad credit where bad credit. It's not the Secretary of State's office. It is the Sergeant at Arms and the legislative house stopped putting all this contact information on the website.
I know.
So it makes it very difficult for you. All you get is a legislative generic email and a phone number to the Sergeant at Arms office if you want to contact your legislator. Now, this is silly, and the reason I mentioned the Secretary of State is because all this information is on the Secretary of State's website. It's not on the State House website, but if you want to look up all the candidates, everybody who ran for office, you can download all
their contact information.
All the contact information. You can't get the Twitter information and the Facebook stuff. That's stuff that we have to dig for on our own, and it doesn't have the papers. That's something that we have to figure out and add to their page. But if you want to get their email address and their phone number and their snail mail address where they live, that's all on the Secretary of State's website. So why they make it private on one public site and public on the other doesn't make sense to me. But you can get all the information you need at ethanallen.org, and it's under roll calls. There's two menus. There's one at the top that has roll calls that you want to scroll down and find, and there's another one that's on the lower left that has Vermont legislative roll calls. And it actually says 2017, but that's it's actually updated to 2019. I'm just having trouble with WordPress trying to get that 17 changed.
Okay. Well, it's a wonderful resource for us citizens to be able to have the knowledge of what the votes were about, who voted in favor, who voted against, and how to contact your legislators if you would like to do that, to ask them to support something or ask them why they didn't support something. It's a wonderful, wonderful resource. And I urge you folks to access it, look it up, and because, like you say, to become an informed voter. It's not enough for a candidate to say, "Oh yeah, I'll support X or I'll support Y." You want to know, why are you supporting that? And you don't tell the candidate what you want or how you feel about a given bill. You don't do that first. You ask them where they stand. So thank you for that, Rob, and thank you for doing all that hard work. That's tedious.
It can be.
Yes.
It's a lot of yeses and nos.
Yes. Yes, aye and nay. So you and I were talking earlier about some of the things that we might discuss tonight. And you had mentioned terminology, the terminology of the day. It's unbelievable what is happening in this country with all of these headline terms. Why don't you start with one, totalitarianism or whatever?
Well, yeah, it started, I thought that this would be important because there's a lot of heat and vitriol in our politics today, and people are throwing around some names at each other. I mean, you hear the president being accused of being a dictator, or being a totalitarian, or being a racist, or all these things that are being thrown around. And I think we need to step back a little bit and remember what some of those terms are. Another big one that's being debated, of course, is socialism.
Oh boy!
What's the difference between socialism and democratic socialism and communism? And of course, fascism. People are being, throwing around the term Nazi quite a bit. What does it really mean?
Exactly.
And a lot of these times, I think that people have the opposite understanding of what the term actually means. There's also a loss of rootedness in our history that came with, I think you'd have to be living under a rock to have missed the controversy over the Betsy Ross flag.
Oh my!
With Colin Kaepernick, the ex-football player, said, he told Nike to pull the Betsy Ross shoe because that flag represented slavery and racism. It doesn't represent slavery and racism.
No.
Not at all. I mean, what the flag stands for, particularly the Betsy Ross flag, that was the flag of the American Revolution. And it stands for the principles set forth in the Declaration of Independence, which, we all know them so well. We have inalienable rights granted to us by our Creator. Among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Exactly.
That's what that flag stands for. And those principles that flag stands for are what ultimately led to the end of slavery in our country. No country could live with slavery and uphold those principles. And it didn't happen as fast as many of us, looking back historically, would have liked it to have happened.
But it happened.
But those principles that were put forward in that flag are what made it happen.
Yes, and I like to think that while our country isn't perfect, when you look at the fact that this country did away with slavery, that shows you the goodness of the country, that we could change that.
And that is pretty unique in history. I mean, if you want to look at the history, human beings have only been around in civilization for, 5,000 to 6,000 years. But all the major cultures have had slavery throughout history. You look at the Chinese have had slavery. You look at the Greeks, they had slavery. You look at the Romans, they had slavery. The Vikings had slavery. You look at the African nations had slavery. They were the ones who were selling the slaves.
They brought them to the United States.
Europeans.
Yeah.
You look at the Incas, the Aztecs, the Mayans, the South American and Central American Indian cultures all had slavery. You look at the Indian cultures of North America, the nomadic cultures, they were battling each other, and then when they took people in battle, they enslaved them.
Sure.
What's unique about the European culture of the 18th century is that it's the first time ever a slave-holding culture said, this ain't cool. And it's not right, and we need to get rid of it. Yep. And they did.
Exactly.
And it wasn't easy. It's not like they flipped a switch. England did it first, and France and Spain, the United States. To our credit or discredit, to our credit, we did it. To our discredit, we were a little late to the party.
Well,
compared to some other nations, but we did it.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to recognize.
The goodness.
The goodness. We can't forget the badness, because the badness still has some impacts.
It gives you perspective.
And it gives you perspective, and you have to respect that the people who are on the other side of that coin have a perspective of their own as well. That is probably hard for you and I maybe to understand as well. You have to understand that, but we as a culture and as a people have to understand that what that flag stands for is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These are our rights given to us by our Creator. And it's interesting, they don't say God. Because somebody could say there's no God, but everyone was created. So there's no denying that we were all created. And if we were created, we have a creator. So those are inherent to us. And it's because of those principles that this country has become increasingly a more perfect nation. And that's what our Constitution calls on us to be. Not a perfect nation, because we're imperfect people. Yeah. Imperfect people will never be able to form a perfect nation. But the goal is to become more perfect. And we've been more perfect year after year after year and decade after decade.
I see in the more recent years that we're doing more of a downturn away from the principles that made this country great. Yeah. And it's time to do an about face. And what's going to be necessary for that about face to get back to our founding principles is for us to ensure that our young people learn about the true founding of this country, the sacrifices that were made to give us the rights and the opportunities that come along with responsibilities, by the way. And about the slavery, it's easy to say, I suppose, when you're not in those shoes. But if I were a descendant of those who were enslaved, I would be so proud of this country for freeing my people. Instead of angry and wanting restitution, what's the term they want?
Reparations.
Reparations. And, just be happy that you live in the land of the free and that you're not a slave, that you are equal to everyone else. You have the opportunities that everyone else has in this nation. That's a blessing. But there's so much anger being instigated. I believe, Rob, that there are people deliberately inciting anger and, just frustration and creating problems in this nation that don't need to be created.
That's true, but that's what, that's been a hallmark of politics since forever, is people try to agitate and create anger and backlash and get this person to dislike that person so they'll vote against this person. That's kind of the name of the game, and I hope that we can help people rise above that and see when they're being manipulated. And again, what that founding principle that you just mentioned, Linda, really is individual rights.
Yes.
This country was founded on a principle of individual rights.
And responsibilities.
And responsibilities too. But I think a lot of people take that for granted today, and they don't understand it, because we are not a country that is built on collective rights.
No.
We do not have collective, and that's what so much of the dialogue today is about in politics. It's the collective rights. Well, the majority of the people want this policy, therefore we should have this policy. That's antithetical to what this country was founded upon.
That's right.
All the checks and balances put into our Constitution that are put into the balance between the states and the federal government, and the three branches of government within the federal government, and the branches of government within the state governments, and then the municipalities and individual liberties. They're all there to protect the individual from the majority. And people are forgetting that. And that is what I think is the biggest danger that we face, because, it could be, if you believe in collective rights, that the good of the many outweighs the benefit of the few or the one, then it's okay to kill the minority, so long as it benefits the majority. And so many other countries have, that's what led to in communist Russia, and the Soviet communist Russia. They murdered tens of millions of people because that would be what was best for the collective. That's what happened in Nazi Germany, where they said, the majority of us Aryans, it would be better for us if we were to exterminate the Jewish population and confiscate all their stuff and keep it for ourselves.
Right.
That's the sort of mentality that exists with collectivism. The important thing about individual rights is, if everybody wanted to kill you or kill me and take our stuff to make it better for everybody else, no, we have an inalienable right to our life and our liberty. And if you look at all the stuff that's in the Bill of Rights and the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, the right to freedom of speech, the right to freedom of religion, to petition government, freedom of our papers from search and seizures, all of those rights are there to protect us as individuals. We're not collectivists.
Why?
And a lot of people today in politics, I think, want to undermine that value.
Individual empowerment.
The empowerment of the individual. And they want to make us subservient to the collective.
Yep.
And that's what's happening today. That's the major fight. And we need to, in my opinion, fight really hard to keep that. Because if it goes away, then America goes away. The United States of America ceases to exist as to what it was founded upon.
Why do you suppose that there is so much collectivism these days? This group and that group and the other group. Is it because they're weak as individuals and they don't know how to empower themselves? In order to be empowered, you have to work. You have to be a thinker. You have to be a contributor, a positive contributor to society, instead of falling back on groupthink. Mm-hmm. When you fall into that group mentality, you're really sort of giving up your individual empowerment and your rights and your opportunities to be the person that you are, instead of getting into some group that, feels like it's only empowered when they have more people involved in that.
Well, our Constitution allows for the freedom of association. And this is another point that I want to get across to folks, is when everyone says, and the left will use this, in conservatism, you're on your own. It's every person for themselves.
Why not?
That's not what it means. That's not what it means. You have the freedom to associate, but in a collective society, you're forced to associate with folks. People that you may disagree with, people that you may have a different opinion of, want to go a different direction. In a free society, you're able to pick who you hang out with, and that makes for much.
So
family is. I mean, you have families. That's the core. You have a strong family unit. That's a freedom of association. You're not on your own if you've got
a support system.
If you've got a support system of a spouse and parents and children and grandparents and extended family. That's an association that you have. You have church groups. That's an association of people coming together to help one another and get things done.
But they're still individuals.
Rotary clubs. Yeah, they're individuals making decisions to cooperate with one another. In a collective, everybody's sort of in the same fishbowl, and it doesn't allow for individuality. It doesn't allow for creativity. It doesn't allow for a different idea. You look at the stuff that they're trying to force us to do these days.
I know.
Medicare for all. Everyone's got to be in the same fishbowl.
Okay, Bernie, that's enough of that.
We used to have before and we've gone down the socialist road for healthcare in Vermont.
We blew millions of dollars.
And we had back in the 1990s, we had like 33 different insurance companies that were in the state competing with different products.
Under Howard Dean, though, a lot of those insurers left the state.
They did. Now there are two. So there's less competition, less, because they were always trying to figure, how can I develop a better product for you that you're going to want to buy from me?
And that gives the consumer choice.
Yes.
When you have more than one company, when you have Medicare for all, that's government control.
Yeah.
You have this and only this, and that's what you get.
Yep.
And when you have capitalism, a free market society that this country was founded on, then you have options to choose from. What can we afford? What best meets our needs as a family or as an individual? And you can pick and choose what best meets your needs.
Yeah, and something that meets your needs may not meet my needs.
And you're paying for your own.
Yep.
Whereas with Medicare for all, who's paying for that?
Well, apparently the 1%.
Oh, I see. Uh-huh.
But that, I mean,
The 1% are too smart for that.
they're too smart. They also don't have enough money collectively.
Yeah.
If you basically exterminated them all and took all of their assets, you still wouldn't have enough money to pay for
This brings
the
up
Green New Deal and Medicare for all and all of these different.
Go ahead.
But that's the allure. It's the idea that somebody else is going to pay for your stuff. It's the idea of getting something for nothing is very attractive to people because we're all self-interested. And if I can get something without having to invest anything in it, that has an appeal. But that's the genius of our founding fathers pictured here, is they figured out a system. Capitalism is a fuel. Our constitutional and unlimited government is the engine that makes it work. And they understood that if you are going to act in your own self-interest, you have to, let's figure out a way to create an engine to put that fuel into that will make it benefit everybody. And that is exactly what our Constitution does. The beauty of free market capitalism and the morality of free market capitalism is before you can do anything to help yourself, you must provide something of value to your fellow human beings. It may be one human being, it may be hundreds of human beings, but you have to figure out something of value. Like if you sell meat, before you can buy yourself a sandwich for lunch, you have to sell me and 10 other people a cup of coffee. Because, hey, Rob values coffee. He wants that cup of coffee first thing in the morning. I'm going to provide that for him. I'm going to charge him something that he values. I value your service. I value the coffee. You have done something for me, your fellow human being, that I value. I give you something in return. That's money and a profit. And you take that and you go buy your lunch. You have to serve your fellow man before you can serve yourself. In capitalism,
Yes.
That's the morality. And the difference between capitalism and socialism or any collective is that you don't have to, in a socialist society or a communist society where everybody takes according to their need and provides according to what they get. You just take what you want without having to provide anything of value in return.
It's a taking.
And that's why those societies break down, because the incentive is not to produce anything and only to take something, and then it doesn't work.
And capitalism provides a country of workers and profit and products. And so if you're industrious and you work hard in school and you graduate from college or even high school, if you're a hard worker and you're creative and you're motivated and you want to be successful, you find a way to create a business, a service, or a product that people will want. And then they will come to you and they will buy that. And when they buy that, as you say, they're happy to have what you have made for them. At the same time, they're helping you to create some wealth because you've done all the work to make that available to them. But today, there is hatred of the wealthy.
Yeah, and that's exactly why, I think. I think people are trying to undercut that ideal of capitalism. They want profit to be the enemy. I saw that just with this protest the other day about, God, I can't even remember what they were protesting at UVM. It might have been the Betsy Ross flag, but they were saying something along the lines, or maybe of, I'm sorry, I got my phone. They're saying something along the lines of, profit is the enemy. That was the end of their chant. The enemy is profit. But profit is
benefits everybody.
Profit is what is the tangible evidence that you have provided value for your fellow human being.
And guess what? When let's say you have the business and you're meeting the needs of people, all right, with your product or your service. And so you're getting income from it and perhaps you become wealthy. That's a great model for other people to mimic, to follow.
Yeah. Or come up with something better. I mean, it happens all the time. You look at music, for example. I mean, somebody figured out a way to capture music from the air, and it was originally on the metal discs that would prick, and then somebody figured out how to make a vinyl record. And that was great for a while, and somebody figured out how to make a compact disc. And compact discs were, drove the vinyl record people out of business. And then now everything's a download from the internet.
Oh, yeah.
It's getting, it's consumer oriented. It's about how do I find value. I found a more valuable way to deliver music to my fellow human being.
Easier, perhaps.
Well, easier and more convenient. And now vinyl's coming back because the people who are making vinyl records again say, well, yeah, there's a quality issue here. Yeah, that's cheaper. Yeah, that's easier. But there's a certain quality to a vinyl record, the way it sounds, the way it plays. And not everybody. I prefer just download it off the internet for 99 cents, or there's some places, I guess, you have Spotify now and Pandora that's a subscription service and it's all for free. But see, people are always trying to find ways in a capitalist system that will provide value for their fellow human beings.
Yeah, to the purchaser.
And when they hit on it, they get a profit.
Yes.
And that profit
That's a motivator.
And people, for some reason, there are a lot of people out there don't like that. They don't like the fact that, it's, profit's evil. It's not evil. It's value. It's the tangible evidence of value. But if you want to take, if your motivation is just to take without providing anything of value in return.
Take it from someone else.
Then you want to say, oh yeah, that guy's profit, that's evil. I can just take.
Well, that's a way, that philosophy that's being pushed is a way to try to destroy a fundamental of the type of country that we have, where people are industrious as individuals. Or maybe you and I are in the same family, or we're good friends and we decide together, you have certain skills, I have certain skills, and we decide, we come up with an idea for a business to create a product or a service. And that's exciting. That's empowering. That gives people hope and enthusiasm for life. When you can see how you can make a difference.
It does. And the reason I think people are trying to push for more collective, to get away from individual rights, to get away from individual initiative and individual responsibility.
And empowerment.
And all the dynamics and wealth and prosperity and high standards of living that it's created in this country is because they're interested in control. And you can't control people when they are self-sufficient. When they're individuals, you can control a mob. A mob is very easy to control and manipulate. And
because they're dependent.
You make them dependent, and you say you're dependent upon the collective, and you're going to do what I say. And you have these people who are, I guess the correct term for it is narcissistic psychopaths, who ultimately get in control of the collective, and they become dictators. That's the danger of socialism and communism and all the collective. And I want to get into these terms that we're talking about, with like totalitarianism and authoritarianism. Authoritarianism is a good one because what's the root of authoritarianism? Authority. If the government, if you're in favor of giving the government the authority to make decisions, the authority to determine what kind of health care you have.
Get out of my life,
the
government.
Authority to what kind of insurance you have to buy. The authority to tell you that you have to buy insurance.
How about educating your children?
The authority to tell your children where they have to go to school. The authority to tell your children what they have to learn when they're in school. The authority to ban plastic bags as opposed to paper bags. If you think that that's the role of government, you are an authoritarian. You're not for freedom. You are for government authority in every major and most minor aspects of life.
An authoritarian basically wants to give over control of their own life to government.
Or have it seized from them. You might not necessarily want to give up your responsibility to the government. The government, in many cases, will take that from you. They can seize the authority to do that, or they can have it be given. When Benjamin Franklin Where is he? He's got to be in that picture someplace.
Oh, I'm sure.
But anyway, when they finished the Constitutional Convention, the story is Benjamin Franklin came out and his citizens said, "What kind of government have you given us, Mr. Franklin?" And he replied, "A republic, if you can keep it."
Exactly, and we're on the brink.
And I agree. I think we're on the brink. I think we're seeing many more people who are embracing collectivism. And they're all the same. They're all capitalism and free market. Capitalism and limited constitutional government is defined by our Constitution it's very rare, a very precious and very fragile thing. All the other things are variations on collectivism, whether it's a king who is the authoritarian and has the totalitarian power, or if it's the Politburo in the Soviet Union, or the party that is all powerful and totalitarian, authoritarian. If it's an emperor, if it is
China.
If you have a dictator, such as in China, or even a democratically elected person who seizes authority, like Hugo Chavez in Venezuela, or Adolf Hitler in Nazi Germany. Everyone would say, we're a democracy. Well, Hitler was democratically elected.
Yeah.
He seized a lot of authority that I don't know enough about the German Constitution to know if he had it or not, but he seized a lot of power after he got in there. But we are giving up power to government today.
I know. Not
in very much the same ways, not for the same ends.
Giving up our personal responsibilities to be taken care of. The group mindset, whatever you want to call it. And that is why, Rob, it is so critically important for the viewers to grasp, if they don't already, how important it is for them to pay attention to what's going on in our country and in our states and in our communities, that the individual empowerment should not be taken away. And our children and our grandchildren must be informed about the founding principles of this country and why they have freedom and why they have rights and why they have responsibilities that go along with that. And if that doesn't happen, if the youth do not learn those things in our schools or at home or both, hopefully, then this country is in big trouble because our youth are the future of the country.
They are the future of the country, and I don't think they are being taught these principles.
I don't either.
I think they're being taught quite the opposite in our schools.
First of all, sit still in the classroom and pay attention. You're here to learn. Those are the rules.
Well, you see what's happening today. They're sending them out of the school every day to go protest this, that, or the other thing. And say, we're having a closed school today. All the kids are going outside to protest climate change or protest gun control. These kids are being manipulated.
Of course, they're indoctrinated.
Manipulated and indoctrinated, and they're not learning this. The other part of we talk about the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness in the Declaration of Independence. The phrases that follow that are very important too. And they say it is to maintain these rights that we form governments. Mm-hmm. I'm paraphrasing, but that's
rights for the people.
Yeah, those individual rights. And if the government ceases to do that, then it becomes illegitimate, and you have the right to throw it off. And
yes.
I look at what's happening today with I wrote an article for the papers a couple weeks ago about what I call the totalitarian, authoritarian plastic bag ban that just passed. And I got some flack for people saying, how can you call this totalitarian? Hitler was a totalitarian, Stalin was a totalitarian. But again, understand what that term means. Authoritarian means the government has the authority to make a decision. If the government has the authority
about your life
to decide for me whether I want a paper bag or a plastic bag when I check out at the grocery store or bring my own canvas bag, that's authoritarian. And totalitarian means the government has the decision-making capability over the totality.
And your
everything.
Choices are gone.
And my choices are, I don't get to make decisions anymore as an individual. The government is in total control over the decisions that I make. So if I can't decide paper or plastic for myself in this society, what am I free to decide for myself? Mm-hmm. And those are questions that we have to ask, because these people, You served in the legislature. You're smart, you're intelligent, you're diligent, but you don't know my situations.
Right.
And you don't know everything. I go down there and they're good people. And it's a lot of time that they devote to running for office and serving down there. You
Definitely.
don't get a lot of money.
No.
But when you see decisions being made by people who have so much less information about a situation than you as an individual business owner, or you as the head of a household, or you as trying to make decisions for your family. And you're there for 4.5 months. You're on a committee, and a freshman legislator this year from South Burlington was on the Kurt and Marcus and Kurt show on the radio, and he was saying, "Yeah, it's just like college, It's like freshman year of college. You come in there, there's so much to learn. You're learning all these things." And I'm thinking to myself, would you ever let a freshman college class decide how to design a healthcare system for a state? No!
Right.
You would never in a million years do it. These people are, again, smart. The freshman class at Harvard, taking Economics 101. It's about a semester, right? That you're in there, your committee, but you're not being taught necessarily by the brightest professors. You're being lectured to by lobbyists and people with special interest groups who come in and tell you this is what you got to do. They're not telling you the ins and outs necessarily.
That's true.
They're giving you a biased perspective on it. The people who actually work for a living don't have time to come in and testify for this. So it's all special interest groups for the most part. 95% special interest groups. Very few citizens come in and say, "Hey, I'm just Joe Blow off the streets and I read about this and this is really concerning to me." Mostly it is paid lobbyists or people with a very ingrained special interest group, or people who've been whipped into a frenzy by, like a VPIRG or a Conservation Law Foundation or something like that. They'll bust people in and they'll put on badges for the day. But you take these dozen people and you put them around a conference table, and this is what they listen to, and they're basically eating bulk snacks from Costco for a couple hours a day and listening to this, and then they're making a decision. It's like taking the freshman class out of a college at any college and saying, "Hey, design a $6 billion state budget for me."
Yeah.
And do it in a semester. It's crazy the way we do this stuff. And the founding fathers made it so you weren't supposed to be doing all that stuff. Most of that stuff was supposed to be left to us, the citizens. Big decisions, the roads, treaties, things like that. But
guess what? A lot of it's about money. You get state money, you get federal money for your roads and so forth. And so you abide by the rules that come with the money. Not in all cases. I mean, in some cases, a community decides what they want. They may have to meet certain standards to get the funding. I don't know. But there's an awful lot happening, and we need to get back to individual empowerment. We need to make sure that our children are learning so much more than I believe that they are learning now. I know that I spoke with a teacher at a gathering in Burlington last week, and she's a special ed teacher, and she told me some stories that would make you sweat bullets. I mean, the things that she tried to do to help these young people, and when the student rebelled, she was the one in trouble.
Uh-huh.
It's disheartening because it doesn't help anybody. It discourages the educator, and it doesn't help the child to learn.
Yeah.
So nobody wins, and yet we're spending, I think Vermont spends the 4th or 5th highest average per pupil money spending in the country.
Yeah, we're up there. We're always in the top 3.
And so what are we getting for that? I would like to find out from each school how the money's being spent, what categories, and then look at what they're doing and what are we getting for the investment. Because that's our money. We work hard for it. And we want it to be well spent and to get top drawer results. That's how I feel. You know, money doesn't grow on trees, not for most of us. And when we cough up our tax dollars, which are not cheap in Vermont.
Yeah. But, you know, I think it's the parents who need to be given more responsibility for their children's education. And that's why I'm a big fan of school choice, because if you send your, there's another op-ed that I wrote, not this last month, but the month before, was about how the kids are being indoctrinated into, and I don't think it's healthy for them. And we have very high, high suicide rates in Vermont. We have high drug abuse by young people in Vermont, and alcohol abuse.
Stimulated, motivated.
Well, I think that schools are going out of their way to scare the bejesus out of these kids over things like climate change and guns. And, you'd never know that the gun violence in the country's been declining rapidly since the 1990s. But because it's in the news and because it is so horrific when it happens, the impression that I think a lot of people get is that this is prevalent. It's happening all the time. It's happening every day, and it's going to happen to me. If I go into my public school, it's going to happen to me. And I think the teachers are there saying, yeah, it's going to happen to you. So let's have a protest. Let's go, call for gun control. And then when it doesn't happen, how are the kids supposed to react? And the same thing with climate change.
I was just thinking.
They come to the kids and say, we're all going to die. First, the polar bears that are going to
12 years, right?
Yeah, if we don't do this within 12 years, all the polar bears are going to die first, and then you're next. And it's scaring them to death. And then, when these policies don't pass, what are these kids supposed to think? Oh my God, the adults don't care?
Yeah.
They want us all to die? And the other stuff is, all this, the triggering. And, we talked a little bit about, the rate. How would you feel if someone was telling you everybody in your community is a racist, or they're a homophobe, or they're, misogynist, and you're either a victim or you're a perpetrator of this? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's got to be an awful way to live.
It's so destructive.
And the kids in order for the kids to get praise in the school, they have to ingest all this stuff and regurgitate it.
Yeah.
And that cannot be healthy.
Well, there's another thing that is disturbing in the schools, and that is that they've really taken away the desire to excel, because gosh forbid that one person should get an A+.
Well, they're certainly working on a lot of that. Getting the grades out, and my daughter went to the public school system and had a wonderful experience. And
well, this
she
is
had
all fairly recent.
Well, she's a recent graduate. She graduated. She's going to be a junior in college, so it was just a couple of years ago, and it seems like yesterday that she graduated. But she had a great class, and they were very academically focused kids, and they were competitive with one another, but they also helped.
Healthy.
And they also helped one another.
Yes.
It was really wonderful to see. It was a great dynamic, but they all wanted to be validated.
How did this all change in the last 8 to 10 years?
Well, I don't know if it's changed. I think it has to do with the culture.
Oh, I think it has.
I think there were parents who were involved in the schools. There were parents who and families who really took an interest in their kids' education. There were parents that really took an interest in the community as a whole. And these kids, I think, were a special group of kids. And that's I wish it were more often than not that this was the case. There were kids in the class who didn't, have a lot of resources, and the community rallied around those kids, bought them basketball shoes, and made sure that they were able to contribute and participate. That's what it should be about. But I do think that there's, we don't want kids to have low self-esteem or have any challenges that they feel like they need to overcome. If you're brought up to feel like everything should be handed to you, then when you get out there and a politician says, I'm going to hand this to you, well, of course you are. That's the way it's supposed to work, right?
No.
But it's not. And, people say, oh, when these kids get out into the real world, then they're in for a
Why
surprise.
not prepare them now?
But here's what's worrying me, Linda. These kids now are the real world. They're in Congress. They are in our legislature, and they're not being gobsmacked. They're saying, no, we're going to do it this way. And I've got the power, and you're going to give up all the stuff that you spent your life earning, and you're going to give it because that's the way it's supposed to work. So I have a feeling, if we don't fix this, that's going to be the reality.
Well, I agree with you, and I think that another one of the major, very major problems that we have right now is the border of our nation. We are a sovereign nation, an individual nation, and we need to have secure borders. We cannot allow people from, it's not just South America now, they're coming from Africa and all over the place through Mexico. And why the Democrat? What does an open border do? People come in without respecting our people or our laws. Granted, we have a responsibility because we're not securing our border. And so that's being allowed to happen. And why the Democrats want people of other backgrounds who obviously don't respect our country, are probably looking to be taken care of at our expense. We have many illegal families now in this country, and many children of illegal families, non-American citizens, in our schools that we are paying for. And maybe in a number of cases, even housing and health care. And yet our nation is at least $22 trillion in debt. How can we take on people from all these other countries and take care of them when we have our military veterans who are living on the streets? We have American citizens who are poor and struggling. Why is this okay with the Democrats in Congress to allow this to continue? It is such a drain on our nation. Instead of having people here who know our language and they're equipped to work because they know how to speak English and so forth, so they could be productive citizens like my grandparents who came here. In those days, you came through Ellis Island in New York, and you had to have a sponsor that would take you into their home and provide you living quarters and help you to find employment and feed you and so forth until you could get on your feet. Today, these people come, and whose responsibility is it?
Well, I think you make a good point. We have to have secure borders if we're going to be a sovereign nation.
Absolutely.
We also need to have immigration. But it needs to be legal.
Absolutely.
And, immigrants tend to be some of the most productive entrepreneurs that the country's seen. I think that the percentage of entrepreneurs who come from immigrant backgrounds far exceeds the percentage of entrepreneurs from native-born Americans.
And that's great for them.
Yeah. And it's great for us too, because they're creating jobs. They're creating value. They're coming and creating value, but you have to come in legally.
Yes, respect us.
You have to respect the laws of the country. And from what I see, most of the immigrants who've come here legally support having a legal border.
Oh, definitely.
Because talk about fairness. I mean, these are folks who went through all of the hoops that you have to jump through. Mm-hmm. And from my perspective, I would make it fewer hoops. I would make it easier to come into the country as an immigrant, because we do need people to come in and work.
Well, if we'd stop aborting our children, we wouldn't have that problem.
Oh, that's another topic as well. But while we're on immigration, I mean, like in my town of Stowe, we don't have enough people to do jobs.
No,
for
in
small
St.
business.
Albans, there are businesses all over the place. We're hiring.
Yeah, and there's, we've had, very prominent businesses in our town closed down for 1 or 2 days a week.
We've had some closed down in St. Albans, but my approach to that, if I were queen, which we know I'm not, would be to have the Department of Labor and the Agency of Human Services come together, look at the list of people on welfare, and match them up, assuming they're able-bodied, and match them up with the jobs in the area where they're living. And if you don't take the job and you're capable of doing it, you're off welfare.
Well, I think that that's probably something along those lines needs to be done. I do think immigration and welfare reform are two halves of the same coin.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've kind of hammered that to death. We're down to about 5 minutes.
Wow, time has flown.
When you're having fun. So capitalism is a good thing. Socialism is government control of your life.
It is.
The more the government does for you, the less control you have over your own
Democratic
life.
socialism, communism, fascism, they're all basically kissing cousins. They're all collectivist forms of government where individual rights are subservient to the needs of the state or the group or the party or the king or the emperor or whatever it is. The choices are to be an individual in a republic with individual rights that come first, or a drone in a hive. Mm-hmm. Those are the two.
Socialism.
Those are the two choices, and we've seen that what capitalism combined with our brilliant Constitution
absolutely
does is create more prosperity, more freedom, a higher standard of living, more value for the people living in it, and it's a cleaner. I mean, everybody talks about the environmentalism. The United States is one of the cleanest countries in the world.
And yet the environmentalists are trying to control every aspect of our lives. Now they want to tell you what kind of appliances you have to have in your kitchen. Again, what kind of appliances, what kind of bag you can get at the grocery store, what kind of light bulb you can use, what kind of electric cars,
what kind of electricity do you have to buy in order to make that light bulb go? What kind of car do you want? This is authoritarianism. If the government has the authority to make all of these decisions for you, you are living under an authoritarian regime.
Yep.
Period.
No freedom.
That's the definition of the word. And if you want to live in a free society, when politicians tell you this is what we're going to do, you got to stand up and say that's not what the Constitution allows you to do.
We are a constitutional republic, which means the people vote, the people are elected, but those who are elected must comply with the constitutional government.
That's right.
In a pure democracy, the people vote, but once the people, whoever wins, does whatever they want. There's no government structure. There's no constitutional
it's a mob rule.
Structure to protect the people.
Yeah, it's mob rule. Pure democracy is mob rule.
Absolutely.
And the people who feel like they can manipulate the mob are the ones who are pushing for that kind of society to live in. But it's not a very nice society. It is devolved. I mean, that's Hugo Chavez in Venezuela and Cuba and North Korea, the Soviet Union, Hitler's Germany. These are all collectivist societies that imploded.
The last thing that I would add is that the role of our government in the United States of America is clearly defined in the United States Constitution. And there are two things that are going awry in this nation. One is education, and the other is healthcare. And there is no role identified in the U.S. Constitution for the federal government to have any control over education or healthcare. It's just not in there. That is for the states and the communities to take care of. So with that, Rob, we're down to less than a minute. Do you have any quick statement you want to make? I mean, really quick?
Really quick, I would just encourage people to go to the Ethan Allen Institute website, ethanallen.org. You can learn about these issues, many more, and check out those legislative roll call profiles. They're really pretty cool.
Okay, well, thank you, my friend, for coming back on the show. I look forward to having you back again. There's always so much to talk about. And folks, I have to say good night. Thank you for tuning in. And I'll see you again next week. Good night.